Leviticus 14 through 18. Dear Heavenly Father, I'm so grateful for your word. I'm so grateful for this day you made and created. I want to just bless all those who hear my voice. I want to bless this world. And thank you. Sometimes I just get in prayer and all I can say is thank you. And I'm okay with that. I'm so grateful. In Jesus' name, amen. And the Lord said to Moses, the following instructions must be followed by those seeking purification from a contagious skin disease. Those who have been healed must be brought to the priest, who will examine them at a place outside the camp. If the priest finds that someone has been healed of the skin disease, he will perform a purification ceremony using 2 wild birds of a kind permitted for food, along with cedar wood, a scarlet cloth, and a hyssop branch. The priest will order one of the birds to be slaughtered over a clay pot that is filled with fresh spring water. He will then dip the living bird along with the cedar wood and scarlet cloth and the hyssop branch into the blood of the slaughtered bird. The priest will also sprinkle the dead bird's blood 7 times over the person being purified. And the priest will pronounce the person to be ceremonially clean. At the end of the ceremony, the priest will set the living bird free so it can fly away into the open fields. The people being purified must complete the cleansing ceremony by washing their clothing, shaving off all their hair, and bathing themselves in water. Then they will be ceremonially clean and may return to live inside the camp. However, they must still remain outside their tents for 7 days. On the 7th day, they must shave off all their hair, including the hair of the beard and eyebrows, and wash their clothes and bathe themselves in water. Then they will be pronounced ceremonially clean. On the next day, the 8th day, each person cured of the skin disease must bring 2 male lambs and 1 female year-old lamb with no physical defects, along with 5 quarts of choice flour mixed with olive oil and 3/5 of a pint of olive oil. Then the officiating priest will present that person for cleansing, along with the offerings before the Lord at the entrance of the tabernacle. The priest will take one of the lambs and the olive oil and offer them as a guilt offering by lifting them up before the Lord. He will then slaughter the lamb there in the sacred area at the place where sin offerings and burnt offerings are slaughtered. As with the sin offering, the guilt offering will be given to the priest. It is a most holy offering. The priest will then take some of the blood from the guilt offering and pour it on the tip of the healed person's right ear, on the thumb of the right hand, and on the big toe on the right foot. Then the priest will pour some of the olive oil into the palm of his own left hand. He will dip his right finger into the oil and sprinkle it 7 times before the Lord. The priest will then put some of the oil remaining in his left hand on the tip of the healed person's right ear, on the thumb of the right hand, and on the big toe of the right foot. In addition to the blood of the guilt offering, the oil remaining in the priest's hand will then be poured over the healed person's head. In this way, the priest will make atonement before the Lord for the person being cleansed. Then the priest must offer the sin offering and again perform the atonement ceremony for the person cured of the skin disease. After that, the priest will slaughter the whole burnt offering and offer it on the altar along with the grain offering. In this way, the priest will make atonement for the person being cleansed, and the healed person will be ceremonially clean. But anyone who cannot afford 2 lambs must bring 1 male lamb for a guilt offering, along with 2 quarts of choice flour mixed with olive oil as a grain offering, and 3/5 of a pint of olive oil. The guilt offering will be presented by lifting it up, thus making atonement for the person being cleansed. The person being cleansed must also bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, whichever the person can afford. One of the pair must be used for a sin offering and the other for a whole burnt offering. On the 8th day, the person being cleansed must bring the offering to the priest for the cleansing ceremony to be performed in the Lord's presence at the tabernacle entrance. The priest will take the lamb for the guilt offering along with the olive oil and lift them up before the Lord as an offering to him. Then the priest will slaughter the lamb and the guilt offering and put some of its blood on the tip of the person's right ear, on the thumb of the right hand, and on the big toe of the right foot. The priest will also pour some of the olive oil into the palm of his own left hand. He will dip his right finger into the oil and sprinkle some of it 7 times before the Lord. The priest will then put some of the olive oil from his hand on the lobe of the person's right ear, on the thumb of the right hand, and on the big toe of the right foot. In addition to the blood of the guilt offering, the oil that is still in the priest's hand will then be poured over the person's head. In this way, the priest will make atonement for the person being cleansed. Then the priest will offer the 2 turtle doves or the 2 young pigeons, whichever the person was able to afford. One of them is for a sin offering and the other for a whole burnt offering, to be presented along with the grain offering. In this way, the priest will make atonement before the Lord for the person being cleansed. These are the instructions for cleansing those who have recovered from a contagious skin disease, but who cannot afford to bring the sacrifices normally required for the ceremony of cleansing. Then the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "When you arrive in Canaan, the land I am giving you as an inheritance, I may contaminate some of your houses with an infectious mildew. The owner of such a house must then go to the priest and say, 'It looks like my house has some kind of disease.' Before the priest examines the house, he must have the house emptied so everything inside will not be pronounced unclean. Then the priest will go in and inspect the house. If he finds bright green or reddish streaks on the walls of the house and the contamination appears to go deeper than the wall's surface, he will leave the house and lock it up for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest must return for another inspection. If the mildew on the walls of the house has spread, the priest must order that the stones from those areas be removed. The contaminated material will then be thrown into an area outside the town designed as ceremonially unclean. Next, the inside of the walls of the entire house must be scraped thoroughly, and the scraping dumped into the unclean place outside the town. Other stones will be brought in to replace the ones that were removed, and the wall will be replastered. But if the mildew reappears after all these things have been done, the priest must return and inspect the house again. If he sees that the affected areas have spread, the walls are clearly contaminated with an infectious mildew, and the house is defiled, it must be torn down, and all its stones, timbers, and plaster must be carried out of the town to the place designated as ceremonially unclean. Anyone who enters the house while it is closed will be considered ceremonially unclean until evening. All who sleep or eat in the house must wash their clothing. But if the priest returns for his inspection and finds that the affected areas have not reappeared after the fresh plastering, then he will pronounce the house clean because the infectious mildew is clearly gone. To purify the house, the priest will need 2 birds, some cedar wood, a scarlet cloth, and a hyssop branch. He will slaughter one of the birds over a clay pot that is filled with fresh spring water. Then he will dip the cedar wood, the hyssop branch, the scarlet cloth, and the living bird into the blood of the slaughtered bird, and he will sprinkle the house 7 times. After he has purified the house in this way, he will release the living bird into the open fields outside the town. In this way, the priest will make atonement for the house, and it will be ceremonially clean. These are the instructions for dealing with the various kinds of contagious skin diseases and infectious mildew. Whether in clothing, in a house, in a swollen area of skin, in a skin rash, or in a shiny patch of skin, these instructions must be followed when dealing with a contagious skin disease or infectious mildew to determine when something is ceremonially clean or unclean. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "Give these instructions to the Israelites. Any man who has a genital discharge is ceremonially unclean because of it. This defilement applies whether the discharge continues or is stopped up. In either case, the man is unclean. Any bedding on which he lies and anything on which he sits will be defiled. So if you touch the man's bedding, you will be required to wash your clothes and bathe in water, and you will remain ceremonially defiled until evening. If you sit where the man with the discharge has sat, you will be required to wash your clothes and bathe in water. You will remain defiled until evening. The same instructions apply if you touch the man who has the unclean discharge. And if he spits on you, you must undergo the same procedure. Any blankets on which the man rides will be defiled. If you touch or carry anything that was under him, you will be required to wash your clothes and bathe in water, and you will remain defiled until evening. If the man touches you without first rinsing his hands, then he will be required to wash your clothes and bathe in water, and you will remain defiled until evening. Any clay pot touched by the man with the discharge must be broken, and every wooden utensil he touches must be rinsed with water. When the man's discharge heals, he must count off a period of 7 days. During that time, he must wash his clothes and bathe in fresh spring water. Then he will be ceremonially clean. On the 8th day, he must bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons and present himself to the Lord at the entrance of the tabernacle and give his offerings to the priest. The priest will present the offerings there, one for a sin offering and the other for a whole burnt offering. In this way, the priest will make atonement for the man before the Lord for his discharge. Whenever a man has an emission of semen, he must wash his entire body, and he will remain ceremonially defiled until evening. Any clothing or leather that comes in contact with the semen must be washed, and it will remain defiled until evening. After having sexual intercourse, both the man and the woman must bathe, and they will remain defiled until evening. Whenever a woman has her menstrual period, she will be ceremonially unclean for 7 days. If you touch her during that time, you will be defiled until evening. Anything on which she lies or sits during that time will be defiled. If you touch her bed, you must wash your clothes and bathe in water, and you will remain defiled until evening. The same applies if you touch an object on which she sits, whether it's her bedding or any piece of furniture. If a man has sexual intercourse with her during this time, her menstrual impurity will be transmitted to him. He will remain defiled for 7 days, and any bed on which he lies will be defiled. If the menstrual flow of blood continues for more days beyond the normal period, or if she discharges blood unrelated to her menstruation, the woman will be ceremonially unclean as long as the discharge continues. Anything on which she lies or sits during that time will be defiled, just as it would be during her normal menstrual period. If you touch her bed or anything on which she sits, you will be defiled. You will be required to wash your clothes and bathe in water, and you will remain defiled until evening. When the woman's menstrual discharge stops, she must count off a period of 7 days. After that, she will be ceremonially clean. On the 8th day, she must bring 2 turtle doves and 2 young pigeons and present them to the priest at the entrance of the tabernacle. The priest will offer one for a sin offering and the other for a whole burnt offering. In this way, the priest will make atonement for her before the Lord for her menstrual discharge. In this way, you will keep the people of Israel separate from things that will defile them, so they will not die as a result of defiling my tabernacle that is right here among them. These are the instructions for dealing with the man who has been defiled by a genital discharge or an emission of semen, for dealing with a woman during her monthly menstrual period, for dealing with anyone, man or woman, who has had a bodily discharge of any kind, and for dealing with the man who has had intercourse with the woman during her period. The Lord spoke to Moses after the death of Aaron's 2 sons, who died when they burned a different kind of fire than the Lord had commanded. The Lord said to Moses, "Warn your brother Aaron not to enter the most holy place behind the inner curtain whenever he chooses. The penalty for intrusion is death. For the ark's cover, the place of atonement, is there, and I myself am present in the cloud over the atonement cover."